Welcome into our Big Ten Network studios. I'm Dave Revson. Tragedy at Michigan State last night. Rather than our typical programming today, we're going to spend the next half hour updating you on the events in East Lansing. As you're probably aware, 3 students were killed and 5 more injured after a gunman opened fire at 2 separate campus buildings, one a classroom building, the other the student union. Students and local residents were asked to shelter in place while the gunman was still at large. Meanwhile, the campus was engulfed by a massive police and emergency medical presence. The suspect, a 43-year-old Lansing native with a prior firearms conviction, had no known connection to the university. He was later tracked down by police and took his own life. The injured were transported to Sparrow Hospital, which is a few miles from the scene of the shootings. The first report of gunshots came at 8:18 p.m. The shelter-in-place order remained in effect for about 4 hours. It ended just after midnight when police reported that the suspect was dead. We are joined now by Graham Couch, the outstanding columnist from the Lansing State Journal. Graham, really appreciate you taking the time out on what I know has been a traumatic day. You were there last night. Take us through the events as they unfolded.
Yeah, it was a night I don't want to say never expect, because that's not really the world we live in anymore. But it was bizarre to be out on campus because there was an active shooter for quite some time, and I've never, even in the dead of summer, never seen Michigan State's campus that quiet, and yet it was just flooded with police vehicles and lights, and it was just about silent. Even so, just the kind of the humming of cars and people really, just complete lockdown, and some very scared students. I had, friends and colleagues and younger siblings of people I know, and I'd get a text, and people were nervous. They wanted updates. They were barricaded in different places. And then once, once the all clear was given and the alleged shooter had taken his own life and had been found, those conversations with the students were interesting because they had a lot of different feelings coming from a lot of different places, and some were in the MSU Union, for example, where the second shooting happened. I talked to a couple kids there, and heard the first 2 shots, were part of flipping up tables, and then when there was a brief pause, just took off running and hid in a nearby dormitory. And so there was a lot of that, and a lot of parents showing up, just wanting to get their kids and whisk them away. And it was sort of a lot of people just not wanting to be there anymore. But a lot of, I think it's one of those things. This is a generation of kids that grows up in active shooter drills. So they are in certain ways prepared for this. And I talked to them about this, and they know certain things to do that, in our generation, we just didn't deal with. But they still never quite think it's going to happen to them. And you could tell they were shaken, and there was some real fear. And I detailed in the column I wrote today, I had an encounter with a young woman very early on when the all clear was being given, and she kind of stumbled upon me, and I startled her. And I have never seen that look in somebody's eye, that level of fear when she saw me. And I just think she was in a little bit of a state of shock, and it was just different than anything I've experienced.
Give us the lay of the land here, Graham, for people who aren't familiar with Michigan State's campus. I understand these shootings happened in 2 different buildings. One is a classroom building, and the other, as you said, is the student union. Where are those buildings in relation to one another, and just kind of broadly, where are they on the campus?
Yeah, short walk, sort of in the hub of, if people know Michigan State's campus at all, there's Grand River Avenue, which is this kind of main drag, which is sort of to the north of campus, and the Union is right there, just off it, and so is the other building, the hall that was so all of it really in the hub and sort of the epicenter of campus in a lot of ways. A lot of dormitories, a lot of people. It's not, the MSU Union is not a place that's just MSU students. You and I can go there anytime we want. It's a very public place. Now, it's probably primarily MSU students at that time of night, but right in the heart of campus, just off Grand River.
What can you tell us about how the shootings transpired? In other words, where were they in each of these buildings? And do you have any sense of what the duration of the events was?
I don't yet. I mean, a little bit of, firsthand account from talking to kids, and even their accounts varied slightly. So, people remember things differently and trauma differently and sounds differently. There's been some updates from police today, but not a whole lot more in terms of their investigation on the details of the shooting, the weapon, how the shooter got as far away as he did, which is quite a ways. And if he was on foot, that was a little bit of a haul.
Give us a sense of the law enforcement response. I mean, you mentioned that when you went to campus, it was kind of eerily quiet, other than the fact that you have law enforcement vehicles there and emergency medical services as well. Like, how big a scope are we talking about?
Yeah, enormous. If anybody tells you that police can't be quiet, they can do it. I mean, it was, there was not a sound. I mean, I could constantly hear the crosswalk that was, near one of the corners I was at, just repeating over and over, Abbott Road. And because there were no police weren't talking, it was an active shooter situation. Students were all barricaded in, and they were spread out around the campus and around other places looking for the shooter. But it was immense, and it was, Marshal, I believe, ATF, FBI, police, sheriff. I mean, it was just about every organization you can imagine. And the lights from when you sort of first get into the campus area of East Lansing, as far as you could see down Grand River. And then if you came back around, drove at one point back around from where Spartan Stadium is, and you kind of come from the other direction, and it was all blocked off there. So it was it was all hands on deck, and there were, people from outside the Lansing area, it seemed. The response was full throated.
How was the suspect eventually tracked down, Graham?
So they put out a photo, and I believe that led to a lead. We don't know all the details yet. He was found over off in sort of North Lansing, on the northeast side of Lansing, not far from where I grew up in this town and moved back here years ago, not far from where I went to junior high. And when they came upon him, from what I understand, he took his own life. But we don't know all the details yet about what exactly led them to get to that point. But I do know police were spread out. The perimeter in which they were searching was much wider than campus and just East Lansing. And so I think that also helped.
We are first and foremost, obviously, a sports network. The sports angle of this is so insignificant in the broader scheme, but it is something that we have to report on. My understanding now is events canceled for the next 2 days. That includes a basketball game, which is actually supposed to be on our air tomorrow night. What can you tell us about what the internal discussions are from an athletic and activities point of view?
I don't know a lot yet. I'll probably make some calls over there this afternoon. Just filed a column a little bit ago, and this is my sense of things, that there probably wouldn't be anything before Saturday's Michigan State game at Michigan, or the weekend events. I could be wrong on that. It could feel, it's 48 hours would allow you to play a game, I guess, Thursday night. That just doesn't feel realistic right now. And so I would, if I had to take a guess, I would think the weekend would be the beginning of because I know classes are off till next Monday. So maybe they would even hold that point, but I would think the weekend would be the beginning of playing events again.
Anything else you want to add, Graham, before we let you go as you reflect on this experience?
No, it's just, you bring up the sports angle, and we love that stuff, right? We love covering it. That's why we're in this business. And I said I grew up here. I love this community. So when things happen here, it's very personal, and I like to step outside of sports, but it's amazing how things can change. The column you have planned, all the deep digging on MSU's schedule and different things like that you want to do, and in a moment, none of it seems important at all. And that's just one of those things. Today was one of those reminders that there are other things that can take you away from sports really quickly.
Well said. Graham Couch from the Lansing State Journal. Really appreciate your time. I know this has been a difficult day for everyone, and thanks for taking the time out to speak with us, Graham.
No, thanks for having me, Dave.
Our coverage of the tragedy in East Lansing continues here on the Big Ten Network. Stay tuned. In light of the tragic events on campus last night, Michigan State sent out this message to students, faculty, and staff, announcing the cancellation of all campus-related activities for 48 hours. As we mentioned, the men's basketball team was scheduled to host Minnesota tomorrow night. There was also a tennis match scheduled on campus for Wednesday. As you heard from Graham, the current plan is for classes to resume on Monday. Here's what was said last night in the aftermath of the shootings.
This truly has been a nightmare that we are living tonight, but we have remained laser focused on the safety of our campus, our students, and the surrounding community. We are relieved to no longer have an active threat on campus, while we realize that there is so much healing that will need to take place after this. Again, to reiterate the update, there is no longer a threat to campus. Our hearts are with those who have been affected by this senseless act of violence. Giving an update like this is never easy. As a father, I can only imagine how parents are feeling right now. This will be the beginning of a long healing process for everyone who has been affected.
Didn't get a lot of sleep last night, sorry. So many people that just came in. We received a lot of texts that were just, I'm on my way. Just within people showing up, where do you need me? It was a sad but a very proud night for all of us here.
We're all broken by an all too familiar feeling. Another place that is supposed to be about community and togetherness, shattered by bullets and bloodshed. We know this is a uniquely American problem. Today is the 5th anniversary of the Parkland shooting. We're mere weeks past the Lunar New Year shooting at a dance hall, and a few months past a shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde. And looking back at a year marked by shootings at grocery stores, parades, and so many other ordinary, everyday situations, we cannot keep living like this.
We will continue our coverage of the shootings at Michigan State next as we hear from Audrey Dahlgren, another reporter who was on the scene. Please stay with us. A massive outpouring of support last night and today in the aftermath of the tragedy in East Lansing, not just locally, but from throughout the Big Ten community, after 3 students were killed and 5 more injured when a gunman opened fire on 2 separate campus locations. Magic Johnson, Le'Veon Bell among the Spartan legends who lent their support, the Detroit Pro sports teams, and many others, all sending heartfelt messages. Audrey Dahlgren is the sports director at WLNS in Lansing. You see her frequently on Big Ten Network as part of our football coverage in the fall. She joins us now. Audrey, I know you were on campus last night after all of this started. Take us through the timeline of your experience.
So initially, we started to receive some information of an active shooter on campus at around 8:18 p.m. Eastern time here in Lansing, East Lansing area. And quickly after that, things started to progress at a pretty rapid rate. The first initial shots fired were heard at Berkeley Hall, and then it transitioned over to the MSU Student Union on Michigan State's campus. And those two are very close in proximity to one another, right off of Grand River Avenue. It's the main road in campus where all of, the downtown businesses, restaurants, bars are located. It's always really busy. Even at that time of the night, the Union is a place where a lot of students on campus go because they can eat there. There's food options. They can also study there. They have, if we're working on a group project, there's computers there. If students don't have computers now, of their own, laptops of their own, they can go there. So it really is a place where a lot of people gather on campus. And, as the night started to just transpire, it started at Berkey Hall 818. And then really this active shooter was out until a little after midnight. So at large for over 3 hours.
At what point did you head to campus, Audrey?
It was I would have to say around 8:30. It didn't take Ian Kress, who works in the sports, one of our sports reporters. We were team 3 here at the station, and we had to sort of find a way to go to get onto campus because a lot of the roads at this point were blocked off. There's a large circle drive around Michigan State's campus across from the Sparrow statue where you can get to the Union, get to the library in that area. And that was all blocked off by police. You're seeing this video now, it was very heavy police presence from local, state, national. FBI had been called in for this, and it was nothing like I have ever seen on campus. I actually went to Michigan State. I'm an alum of the university, and never witnessed, obviously, anything like that during my time there or going to sporting events growing up. And it was terrifying. And helicopters were swarming flying around the area as they were trying to find this active shooter.
Audrey, I don't want to make this about you specifically, but there's something that just jumped into my mind as you're saying all that. I mean, you're a sports anchor, you're a sports reporter, and there's an active shooter at large, and you're heading into an active shooting scene with this heavy police presence and no knowledge of where this person is. What was going through your mind?
Initially, I think you have a moment of, I don't want to say fright by any means. Obviously, I contacted my parents and everybody to let them know what was happening. But I'm more of I'm sports director and we cover sports, but the athletes and coaches and everyone on campus right now is, just as affected by it all. And finding out, I was in constant contact with people at Michigan State trying to figure out, is the football team accounted for? Are the basketball players accounted for? Women's soccer, men's golf, women's golf. When you are ingrained in a community and you get to know, as I'm sure, Dave, you're very familiar with, you get to know people on a personal level. And in situations like that, it's your job as a journalist to, if you can give one person, if a parent can't find their child in a situation like that and campus is blocked off, you're the people who you have more leeway to try to get to campus, and you're a trusted source. And if you can provide 1 ounce of comfort for someone who has someone on campus or couldn't reach somebody and somehow they were able to find out that everybody from that program was okay, or even from a student standpoint, it's your active service. That's what you're called to do.
Was there anyone you spoke with or any moments that you experienced that particularly resonated with you?
When I first got to campus, there were students who were coming from, because there was a lot of confusion at first of where the shooter was. I mean, people knew that it started at Berkey Hall and then it had transpired and went over to the Union and had stayed along Grand River in that area. But Michigan State's campus is massive. And so it takes a long time. If you're on foot, going to classes there, it takes a long time to get from where the shooter was, the beginning, to where these, students were, where we caught up with them at Acres, across from Owen Hall in the Wharton Center and down by IM East. That's a solid 30, 40-minute walk. And now there was a lot of fear that was taking place. So the students that we were able just to speak with briefly had some different stories, kind of conflicting stories. But in the moment, they were just advised by the police to hide in a field behind a parking structure where the Wharton Center is. But you could feel this, and a lot of, they were mentioning how they were scared. I don't know where to go to be safe. How do we stay safe? And I will say this, the police response was off the charts for, I know it seems like, okay, well, this guy was at large for over 3 hours, but there were hundreds of law enforcement out there. And that was one thing that in the press conference last night that, it could have been probably, a lot worse if everybody hadn't come together so quickly.
Audrey, what can you tell us about the campus today?
People are very sad. And now it becomes, some people are physically okay, but from a mental standpoint, people are very, still very shaken up right now. And, just trying to pick up the pieces and move forward and, come together in any way possible and try to find a solution, if there is a solution, to what's going on in our country right now. I think a lot of people have a lot of, why does this continue to keep happening? And it's one of those things, and as sad as it is to say, I said this, we were on air live for all 3 hours, and we were discussing, one of the anchors here at the station asked and said, did you think this would happen? And it's one of those things where it's like, unfortunately, we live in a day and age now where it's like it's only a matter of time. And there are a lot of people on Michigan State's campus who work in high profile jobs and are immersed in campus life every day, who have asked themselves and said the same thing to themselves is, I hate to say this, but it was only a matter of time until we felt like this was going to happen.
Audrey Dahlgren, really appreciate your time. I know this was a really, really challenging night and day to this point. Thank you so much for taking some time out to speak with us.
Anytime. Thank you.
That's it for our coverage. We'll, of course, continue to keep you posted here on the Big Ten Network in the aftermath of this tragedy. I'm Dave Revson.